If there's one particular genre of television show that I personally cannot stand in any way, shape, or form, it would have to be reality TV. I hate it. I don't care about all the interpersonal conflicts that take place between people who have way too much free time and way too much money. I don't want to know why so-and-so is mad at what's their face and why they're throwing things at it. And besides, I don't know if you know this or not, but pretty much all of reality TV, well, it's fake. As a fan of professional wrestling, you have no idea how good it feels to tell people, or the millions of people who enjoy something, that it's fake. I kind of see why you guys like that so much. But I don't like reality TV. Their storylines are more contrived than most soap operas. Their interpersonal conflicts are all just coached up and told to add more conflict or get bigger or stuff like that. It's boring. It's boring. And that's the thing about it, is that they showed us the real lives of these people who they put on television, then we'd all find out a really sad truth, that their lives are an awful lot like our lives. Ugh, who wants to watch that? But no, they coach all this up because the bigger the conflict is, the more they're going to get what every television show that's ever been created and ever will be created really wants: ratings. Ratings mean that people are watching. The more people that watch, the higher the price for advertising goes, the more money that they make. I've just ruined television for all of you now, haven't I? But as with everything else in life, there are a couple exceptions to this rule for me. While I don't love the traditional style of reality television show, the things that we think about whenever we hear that phrase, there are two particular types that I do enjoy. The first being cooking, which, one look at me, that would have been obvious, right? You mean the fat guy likes to watch shows where people make food? I do. I really do. But I also like the reality TV shows that are like the show Pawn Stars. I don't know if you've ever heard about Pawn Stars before. Pawn Stars is about a particular pawn shop in Las Vegas, Nevada. They get all kinds of really interesting things that come their way. That you get to see the people who are there to sell those particular items. It's kind of a unique thing. They get all sorts of different stuff, from historic memorabilia to celebrity autographs to random pieces to, what I love, really awesome comic books, to movie props, to Super Bowl rings. They get all sorts of different things. The seller brings these items in. They say, "What are you asking for?" The seller gives them a price that's usually outrageous. They bring in an expert or somebody who knows a lot about this particular subject. They find out what the actual value is, and then a negotiation takes place. I love getting to see these sorts of things. Some of my favorite ones are when somebody brings in an item that they've had for years, forever and ever, and they've cherished this thing and they've loved it, but you know what? Their asking price is a little bit on the low side. And it's kind of fun to see their reaction when the expert tells them that this thing that they said, if I could just get a couple of $100, I'll be happy. They find out it's worth tens of thousands of dollars. I love getting to see that facial reaction, to find out that this thing that they had frankly undervalued is worth so much more than they ever thought it was. But if I'm really honest with you, my personal favorites are the ones who come in asking for thousands and thousands of dollars and then find out that it's worthless. Oh, I love that. I eat that up. It's fantastic. It's my favorite way to see different people's reactions. Some folks just get upset or sad about it. Some people will get downright angry because they found out that somewhere along the way somebody lied to them. But my personal favorite is when they argue with experts. Oh, I love that. Understand, to be an expert, you have to devote an insane amount of your time, effort, and energy into learning everything about this. These are people who have spent years of their lives studying and researching and handling. They know this stuff inside and out, and you're just some dude who walked in with this thing that somebody told you was worth a lot of money, and you're going to argue with them. I love it. There was one that was my absolute all-time favorite. This guy brought in a guitar that was signed by a musician. I can't remember which musician it was. I'm not great with that sort of thing unless they played for the Beatles. But he brings in this guitar that's autographed. And rather than bring in their usual autograph experts to find out the authenticity of this particular autograph, they brought in the musician himself. It was super cool watching this dude react like, oh, hey, it's you. Maybe it was Sammy Hagar. That sounds about right now that I'm up here thinking about it. But anyway, this musician, let's go ahead and say it was Sammy, took one look at this autograph and said, I didn't sign this. That's not my signature. And the guy argued with him. He argued with him about his own. Oh, it was fun. I don't know why I like this particular part so much, but there's something really entertaining about watching a guy walk in with a $65,000 Babe Ruth card only to find out that it was a fake and it's worth absolutely nothing. Maybe I need to pray about this sort of thing. I don't know. But there's something wrong about this idea that these people who think this is worth so very much only to find out that it's absolutely worthless. They've put all this value and all this stock into believing that this thing was the end-all be-all, but it wound up being worth nothing. But don't we do that? Isn't that something that each and every one of us in this room, everybody watching online, we've had a history in our lives of believing that something is worth all of this effort and energy, and yes, sometimes even money. And it's not until it's too late that we realize it was worthless. That we wasted all of that time, that effort, and that money. I can't tell you how many times in my own life I've been guilty of doing this sort of thing, of placing more value behind something than what it's actually worth. And time after time, I let myself get devastated. I let myself get heartbroken. I let myself get angry enough to argue with an expert. But each and every one of us, we have a tendency to do this. But oftentimes, we could also say that the flip side of that coin is true too. We have a tendency to undervalue things that really matter. Relationships, friendships, people who genuinely care about us, and we have a tendency to take it for granted. We undervalue it. And it's oftentimes the hardest part about this is we don't recognize that we've undervalued it until it's too late. We know that divorce is something that happens, but we don't recognize how bad our marriage has deteriorated until the divorce papers come for us. A loved one of ours, a parent, a grandparent, we just wanted to spend time with them, but just all the stuff of life kept getting in the way, and we didn't have time. We always thought there would be time, but now we're looking at them and they're in a casket. And we recognize that we undervalued them. As parents, we have a tendency to try to create this idea of the right motivations behind it, right? We'll say something to the effect of, I just want to give my kids the best life possible, and so we'll work weekends, we'll work late nights, we'll work holidays, in every effort we can to get as much money as we can to give our kids that good life, and then they graduate and they move out. And we recognize that we didn't spend any real time with them. We undervalue so many of the things that genuinely matter in our lives. The hardest part of all this is that we tend to do it at the same time. We undervalue things that matter. We overvalue things that don't. We put in all this effort and energy into stuff that doesn't matter at the expense of the relationships that do matter in our lives. It'd almost be funny if it wasn't so depressing. But if there's one area that we probably do this more than most, if there's one relationship that we have a tendency to undervalue, it would probably be the one that most everyone in this room would say is the most important relationship to them. And that's our relationship with God. Ooh, that one kind of hurt a little bit, didn't it? It's something that each and every one of us do. We understand the importance of our relationship with God. We understand that without God we have nothing, that we are nothing, that there is nothing. But we don't pray as often as we should. We don't spend as much time reading our Bibles as we know we ought to. We'll go to church as long as there's not a better alternative available to us. We undervalue this relationship with God for so very long. In fact, I'm going to prove my point. If you're in this room, by show of hands, how many of you feel that you spend an adequate amount of time with God in your relationship with Him? You'll notice my hand's not up either. We all recognize that this is a problem in our lives, and yet not a single one of us is probably doing anything to try to rectify it. We've gotten comfortable with the notion of keeping our faith on generally life support, giving it lip service over and over and over and over again, until we inevitably face some sort of crisis, and then we try to cram a whole relationship with God like we're trying to cram for a final exam. But once that crisis is over, it's right back to the same thing. It's back to that endless cycle. And occasionally we might wonder, why am I not growing deeper in my relationship with God? Why does it feel like God is so distant from me? Why does it feel like He's not drawing close to me? Maybe the reason why it's so easy for us to undervalue this particular relationship, this one that we all say is most important in our lives, is because we don't really know what it is that we have. See, it's kind of hard for us to place value on something that we can't see, that we can't touch, that we can't have any sort of a physical connection with. So it's hard to really invest into that. If I invest my time and effort into a woodworking project, I know exactly how much I've gotten accomplished or how well I've done because I can see it. If I haven't sanded it enough, I just run my hand across it and feel how coarse it is. We know that this is something that we struggle with, but we can't see it. So it's hard for us to really understand it. If we don't understand something, we have to find some sort of a connection for it, do we not? And that's why Jesus used parables as his primary teaching method. See, through parables, Jesus was able to take these things that each and every one of us have at least some sort of a physical connection with, some sort of, at the very least, we can understand it to a certain point because we can see those sorts of things with our eyes. And he would take these illustrations of this sort of thing and he would use it to demonstrate to us things that we haven't seen yet, to help us try to understand a little bit more about what it meant. That's why so many times Jesus will start parables. If you go back and read through the Gospels, oftentimes before a parable, you will see Jesus say the phrase, "The kingdom of heaven is like," or "the kingdom of God is like," because he's trying to give us some sort of a tether to understanding a little bit more about what the kingdom of God is really like. There's this great little parable, and when I say little, I mean little. It is a verse, just one. And yet in this parable, Jesus demonstrates to us exactly how valuable this faith that we tend to undervalue really is. Jesus, as the expert, steps in to tell us exactly what our relationship with God is worth. It's in Matthew chapter 13, verse 44. If you got a Bible, go ahead and open it to it. Like I said, it's a really short verse, but there is so much here to unpack. In fact, there is so much here in this one particular verse that this is the only verse of Scripture we're going to be reading today. Does that even count as a sermon if you don't do multiple verse? Well, we're going to find out, I suppose. But Matthew 13, verse 44, it starts off like this. It says, "The kingdom of heaven is like," I like that, except I didn't put "is" on the notes. Oh, no, it is there. Never mind. I got a contact that's going rogue on me, so it's going to be fun today. "The kingdom of heaven is like treasure buried in a field that a man found and reburied. Then in his joy he goes and sells everything he has and buys that field." That has to be some pretty great treasure, don't you think? But let's take a beat and let's really think about this particular story, this scenario, this parable that Jesus has given us. This guy is just kind of walking through a field that he does not own yet. I don't know why he's walking through a field. That seems like such a random thing to do, right? Maybe he's trying to take a shortcut. Maybe he's running really behind. I don't know. He's just walking through a field when he happens to come across something. Now, Jesus doesn't say this, but I don't know about you. When I read this particular parable, here's how I like to picture it. I imagine this guy found this thing in the same manner that I have a tendency to find things that I'm looking for in my own house, that he tripped over it. Right? He stumbles, he falls to the ground, and as he sits up and wipes the dirt off of himself, he kind of does what is natural to us. He looks for whatever it was that he slipped on, right? He wants to find out, and that's when his eyes find something. He doesn't know exactly what it is just yet. It doesn't look like it belongs in this field. It doesn't look like dirt or rocks or corn, anything that you might expect to find in a field. It's got his curiosity. He wants to know a little bit more. So he kind of digs around the dirt a little bit, trying to bring to light more what this thing is that he's tripped over. And finally, after he spends some time digging and getting dirt under his fingernails and trying to figure out what this thing is, desperate at this point to find out what it is, he gets it loose enough that he's able to pull it out of the ground. But as he tries to pull, man, this sucker is heavy. He finally gets it unearthed, sets it down in front of him, and it is a chest. That's a weird thing to find in a field, right? As a farmer's kid, I found a lot of random things in fields. I've never found a chest. And so now this guy has a choice to make here, right? He can open this chest that doesn't belong to him, that's found in a field that doesn't belong to him yet. Or he can rebury it, leave it alone. But instead, he's already decided, you know what, I'm trespassing. Why not? When he opens up that chest, everything changes. This chest is practically overflowing. It's got gold coins, it's got silver, it's got jewels, it's got money. It is, just as a surface level appraisal, he values it at tens of millions of dollars. If this guy had this chest, if this was his money, he would never have to worry about money ever again. Can you imagine how that would be? To never have to worry about money ever again? The light flickers in his eyes. No matter what, he has to have this treasure. But therein lies a little bit of the problem. See, if he takes this chest that's in a field that he doesn't own yet, somebody's inevitably going to ask the question, right? Where'd you get that? Where'd you find this treasure? Where did that come from? And then if somebody finds out that he found this treasure in this field, well, then the owner has claim to it. He doesn't know how the treasure got here in the first place. It could have been the owner. It could have been an owner from generations ago. It could have been a bunch of seafaring pirates who put the X on the wrong part of the map. I don't know. But if he doesn't own the field that he found the treasure in, then it's not really his treasure. And so he gets a kind of an idea. I'm going to rebury this treasure. I'm going to put it back where I found it. I'm going to maybe bury it a little bit better than it was when I found it, just in case. And then I'm going to buy this field, because if I own this field, then this treasure is mine, free and clear. So he does. He reburies the treasure. He tries to make sure that nothing is exposed on it. And he heads home, trying to figure out some sort of a way to buy this particular field. He's got to be feeling a little bit of a time crunch, because here's the thing about fields. Harvest is always coming. Somebody's going to go out in that field. They're going to work it. They're going to get the crops. They're going to dig for rocks. I don't know, something. And somebody may find that treasure. So if he doesn't hurry, he could lose out on this. And so he's got to find some way to get this done. And not only does it have to be an offer for a field, but it has to be a really good offer, because he's going into this sale absolutely cold. Now, here's the thing about farmers. Maybe you don't know this. Unless they're actually advertising that a field is for sale, if you want to try to buy land off of them, you got to make that offer really good. It can't just be for the value of the land. You also have to factor in the money that he would have gotten next season, or the season after that, or even 10 years from now. So whatever offer you make for this guy, it's got to be solid. And this guy doesn't have much in the way of savings. He doesn't have a really good line of credit right now. So how is he going to possibly come up with the money in order to get this particular treasure in this particular field and do it fast? And finally, a thought flashes across his mind: just sell everything. That is a big statement, is it not? Everything. So he scrambles home, and he's rushing around his entire house. He's grabbing stuff. He's pulling stuff out of closets. He's yanking things off of the wall. If it's not nailed down, it goes. If it is nailed down, grab the hammer, pull it up, it goes. Sell the hammer when you're done. He gets everything, every possession that he's ever owned, what's taken him a lifetime to accumulate. Little knickknacks, gifts from his kids, all these different things that have different meanings behind them. And he has the biggest garage sale anyone's ever seen. Everything must go, and it has to go now. I want to pause for a second right there, because I want to ask about the people that are around this guy. More specifically, what does his wife think about what's happening? All she knows is that her husband came home in a manic state, and he's grabbing everything in the house, all of her knickknacks, all of her family heirlooms. All of these things that have tremendous sentimental value to her. Things that have been a part of her life for decades. She doesn't know what's going on. She doesn't understand why he's scrambling it. All he's been able to do is mumble a little bit about how their ship has come in. But he's taking everything. She watches in horror as her neighbors and her friends and people in her community come and they buy up these things that have meant everything to her. And when she thinks it can't possibly get worse, her husband's now putting a for sale sign outside the house. What is he doing? This doesn't make any sense. But she doesn't know what he knows. Finally, after the last thing is sold, after the last piece of furniture is out of the house and the keys to the house are in the hands of the person who bought it from him, he finally has this thought, you know what, maybe it's just enough. This might work. You would think at some point in time he's getting a little upset as he's selling all this stuff, but no, that's not his reaction at all. He almost seems excited. He's never been this motivated to do anything in his life. He's almost joyful about what's going to happen. He takes all the money that he's earned in this very short sale, and he tracks down the farmer who owns that field, and he presents him with an offer, a tremendous offer. Now, the farmer himself has got to be thinking, who's this crazy dude, and why is he offering me so much money? But then the farmer also has to have a second thought, it'd be kind of silly for me to turn down what he's offering. And so the farmer just shrugs and goes, okay, it's yours. But the farmer doesn't know what he knows. Finally, that breath of relief that it's mine. He takes a moment to himself. He tears up to realize that this treasure, this thing that he had found that is worth everything, it's finally his, that he can have it. Yeah, it cost a lot. It cost him everything. Oh, but it was worth every single penny because the farmer, or the guy, knows what he has. And Jesus tells us that this is how the kingdom of heaven is like. That it's like this treasure that's worth everything. That cost this guy everything he owns in order to possess for himself. And he calls it worth it. This thing that you and I have a tendency to undervalue is worth everything. That when we stack the kingdom of heaven against all the things that this life has to offer us, it doesn't even compare. It's not even a blip on the radar. Yeah, for that guy, all of his possessions, yeah, there maybe was some sentimentality there. But he knew that this was worth it. That what was in that field was more important than anything else he had in his life. And you and I have a tendency to treat it like it's nothing. Understand that this treasure is worth everything, but you and I don't have to worry about the cost. It's already ours. The cost was taken care of when Jesus went to the cross for us. And we have the audacity to treat our faith, to treat access to this kingdom like it's just a thing. If only we knew what we really have. If only we understood the incredible, beautiful, and amazing gift that this salvation, that this kingdom of God truly is. When we treat our faith with as little regard as most of us have a tendency to do, we cheapen the cross. Because it cost Jesus everything. We have to treat faith like it's worth more than that. We have to treat this kingdom like it actually matters, because it does. Because it's greater than everything else that we have. And yeah, you know what? When we treat it this way, when we treat it with the way that it actually deserves to be treated, folks around us may call us crazy. They may wonder why we give so much, why we're so passionate about a thing that we cannot see, a thing that we cannot touch, a thing that we have no physical connection with. They may not get it, but that's because they don't know what we do. But we can tell them about it, because what good is treasure if treasure's not shared? The kingdom of heaven is like treasure buried in a field that a man found and reburied, then in his joy goes and sells everything he has and buys that field.